Allen Christian GMC, your local GMC experts. Explore our wide selection of new and used vehicles. Visit us at 724 Business 60 in Dexter or at allenchristian.com to find your perfect vehicle. Allen Christian, let's get you rolling.
What First State Community Bank means to me is, it says it in its name, community.
We're family, we care about one another, whether it's in our SEMO markets or we can reach out to someone in Farmington, Columbia. They're always there to assist.
We are very customer focused. Our employees do a great job with listening to the customers.
The tellers know 100% of all customers by their name.
If you want to feel at home, then walk into the doors of First State Community Bank.
At Focus Bank, we understand your community because it's our community too. With branches across Southeast Missouri and Northeast Arkansas, Focus Bank offers services such as fraud protection, really free checking, and mobile banking that lets you bank simply and securely, anytime, anywhere. Stop by any of our branches or visit us online to open an account today. Plus, you'll receive an awesome free gift just from opening your really free checking account. And when you refer someone who opens an account, you'll both receive a gift. Focus Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Do you need personalized merchandise? Trying to celebrate the season of that big state run? Then Juju Promotions in New Madrid has you covered. Whether it's heat presses, screen printing, or embroidery, we always have an option that will leave you satisfied and looking your best. With seasonal styles and plenty of accessories, there's something here for everyone. So come in and shop around. You'll be welcome with a smile and leave more fashionable than ever. Call us at 573-748-4040 or visit us in New Madrid.
NextEra Energy Resources is the world's largest generator of renewable energy from the wind and sun, and a world leader in energy storage. Since 2016, NextEra Energy Resources has invested more than $339 million in Missouri to fuel local economic growth. Today, our company owns and operates one wind energy facility in the state and is looking to invest even more in the Show Me State. We are committed to being a trusted community partner and look forward to providing affordable, clean, renewable energy for generations of Missourians to come.
My name is Kevin Rossville. I'm a farmer from Prairie County, Arkansas. Been farming since 1991. Started farming with my father-in-law when I got married. We've been raising rice ever since. We've all been looking for something for a change for years. And I think this 263L is going to be the next and up-and-coming thing for us. It's really going to work well on a lot of different ground and a lot of different farms around here.
Dynagro 263L, available exclusively at Nutrient Ag Solutions.
At SEMO Health Network, we strive to provide caring and affordable health care while making our patients feel welcome in our warm and friendly atmosphere. With locations throughout Southeast Missouri, we provide medical, dental, OB, and behavioral health services to anyone and everyone that may need it. Visit SEMO Health Network for your wellness exams, COVID and flu vaccinations, lab services, dental exams, counseling, and more. For more information, visit our website and let SEMO Health Network take care of you.
Good morning, high school sports fans, and welcome to the first Aycorp Sports Bloomfield Christmas Tournament Seedings Studio Show. Oh, that's a lot of work. I'm Philip Britt, alongside one of the voices of Aycorp Sports, Bobby Alford. Bobby, here around Aycorp, it's the most wonderful time of the year. That means it's Christmas. What does that mean? Bloomfield Christmas Tournament time. Are you as excited as the rest of us are, Bobby?
I tell you, Philip, I am extremely excited. I can tell you this is one of my favorite tournaments of all year, season long, and the reason being is that atmosphere in that gym. I can tell you, when you get kids packed in that gym playing at a high level of basketball, there's nothing like it when it comes Christmas time at this tournament. Thursday and Friday night, man, it's electric in that place. I can't wait till this tournament gets started.
Absolutely. You know, there are a lot of Christmas tournaments around, a lot of holiday tournaments. You know, we've even covered Clarkton this past week. Great atmosphere there, but there's just something special about that Bloomfield gymnasium, that old school feel of that gym. I mean, they've done a great job of modernizing it. You know, they've added restrooms, they've opened up that concession stand area. Great amenities that they've added, opened it up a little bit, but it still has that feel. When you get into that bowl, it still feels like, it could have been 1958 instead of 2023 when you get in there to watch those games.
Yeah, and they've done a good job with that, because when they added on to that gymnasium, they didn't let out too much energy. What I'm talking about, the feel and the sound. When you open an area up, you can let a lot of that out, but I tell you, they've done a great job of designing that place up there. Good job of Bloomfield School Districts in designing that area, because they needed the concessions upstairs. Absolutely. And they did it. And you can still feel the energy every night in that gym. No doubt about it. And we look forward to that. We look forward to it every year. We're excited about bringing you today the way these 16 teams are going to be seeded. We're excited about being able to share this with you as it happens. Right now in Bloomfield, representatives from all 16 teams. And some of you know exactly who's in this tournament. You may have a list in front of you that you're checking off as we go, and that's great. We've got our brackets here in front of us that we're going to write them down as we get the seeds coming in. But some of you may not know. Some of you may be saying, where are all these teams from? Well, I'll tell you. These teams in this tournament, the 16 teams in this tournament, come from 8 different counties in southeast Missouri. They come from Stoddard, Dunklin, Pemiscot, New Madrid, Mississippi, Butler, Carter, and Ripley counties. 8 counties. That's pretty astonishing that you get that many different areas geographically coming together in that fairly centralized location in Bloomfield for this amazing tournament. Sure is, and right now in Bloomfield, they are sitting there, these coaches are going through. So how this actually takes part is they'll get in a room together, and each coach will go through their team. They'll describe their team, maybe games they've won, they've lost, kids they lost from last year's team, additions to this year, whether it's an injured player coming back, whether it is a kid that's going to be out for the tournament because of injury. All that is out there. What that's doing is giving each voting coach an idea of how these teams stack up and helps them dissect how they should see these teams in this tournament. So all that information is out there. Once they get that in, every coach has an opportunity to talk about their team. Then they will pass out pieces of paper and saying, hey, we're voting on the number 1 seed now. Once everybody has voted, votes turned in, you'll name your number 1 seed. If it is gotten to a point where it is a tie, these teams will tie on their seedings. They'll vote again for a second time. Once you get to a point that you cannot untie yourself, they go to a coin flip, which actually happened last year in that seeding meeting. We had a coin flip. Once the coin flip happens, X team will be awarded, say, the 8th seed. The team that would now be in a tiebreaker for that does not get awarded the 9th seed. They go back into the pool, and you start voting now on the 9th seed, because just because you were in that tiebreaker doesn't mean you're awarded that spot. So Interesting how that turns out, but as far as any outside influence, there's no outside influence from media, from anything else, except the coaches in that room and the information they were given, Philip. Sure, absolutely. And it's not just information they're getting there. I mean, every one of these coaches going into this meeting has looked at everybody's record. They looked at who they've played, they did the same thing that we've done. We put together here at Aycorp, we put together a bracket, just a seeding, just for fun, in fact, so that you all out there could actually kind of compare your own notes with it. But when we were doing that, we talked about the teams that these schools had played and who those teams had played. We'd look at, and it seemed like Risco was one that was kind of a central hub for a lot of these teams, because they're a really good team. We've seen that. We actually watched them win the Clarkton Christmas tournament last night, in fact. But they played some of these teams and played them really close. They played Puxico really close in the Bernie tournament. We had that game. They beat Malden, and then they beat Portageville last night. So, they were kind of a team that we could kind of compare teams playing against. And so that's kind of what these coaches are doing right now. In fact, they started a little bit late, so we came on maybe a little bit earlier than we maybe could have. But we've got quite a few things we want to talk to you about beforehand. But we just want to let you know that they started a little bit late. They are in the process. We've got Josh who's a lot of times the last few weeks has been controlling most of what you see on our broadcasts.
And Josh is in Bloomfield right now, and he's sending messages back and forth with our behind-the-scenes folks, and they're keeping track of that. He's sending us some information about some of the things the coaches are saying about their teams and their players, and which players are healthy and which are not, and what some players have been added. And so those are the kind of things that we'll try to share with you as we go through discussing each team as we go. Bobby?
You know, Phil, one thing I think you said there is interesting. You talk about the brackets that, was gathered in this office.
Right.
My bracket 2 weeks ago was way different than then.
Oh, sure.
My bracket this morning is different than I had yesterday before the games played.
Sure.
I think we learned a lot more about a team like a Malden that was in that Christmas tournament there. We saw something from Portageville, as we'll get into talking to later on.
Right.
I think the styles of the way they played, the teams they played, how they played them, how they won or lost the game, I think that goes into some of that thinking for me. And as I analyze a little bit deeper, some teams that won and lost here, I think it gets really interesting when you look at a Kennett who lost to an East Prairie.
Right.
East Prairie lost a home game, to Hayti.
Right.
How do those things have to happen? Kennett beating Dexter. I think those matchups really kind of start to jumble things up, and it makes it so hard to say, well, this team's a surefire 3 seed, or
right.
I think it's going to be a lot of coaches really dissecting that and how they see a matchup. Also, interestingly too, I think if once you get the 1 seed, if you're the 1 seed, can you look and say, hey, I'm going to be playing all these teams here.
Right.
I'm going to vote this guy here because I want that matchup later on in the tournament, round 2 and round 3.
I would say there's definitely some strategy that goes into that when you're the coaches. I think there's going to be some strategy around, who if you're the number 1 seed, who do you vote for when you get to 8 and 9? Where do you kind of cast your vote at that point?
Yeah, and it's all about how you match up against
sure,
the team. And
absolutely.
A lot of these teams have already played each other, so that can affect, say, man, we really don't match up well against this team, but hey, if they drop to this side of the bracket, they play this team, I think that team has a better chance of knocking them off, or they could be a struggle for me. Not that team's that much better than them, but it's all about matchups and the defenses you play. I think some of that can start to come into play as coaches evaluate their teams and who they look at in this bracket as it starts to take shape.
No doubt about it. And so it's going to be interesting. Probably what you said 2 weeks ago, your bracket looked different than it does today. I think 2 weeks ago, there probably was a consensus about the top 4 or 5 teams. Today, I don't think there's a consensus about the top 4 or 5 teams. I think if there are probably 8 of us in the room here, if you polled all 8 of us, we'd have a different top 5. They would be in a different order. Maybe the same top 5, but they'd be in a different order. Maybe not even the same top 5. And I think what that makes for is an amazing tournament. One of the things that I think will play out is that, and one of the things we've talked about, and you've mentioned in our discussions this morning, 1 through 11, I think anybody 1 through 11 could win this tournament.
Well,
any one of them could go on a run and win this tournament.
And remember last year in this tournament, look, we had a 4 seed lose to a 13.
That's right.
We had a Bloomfield team that finished a lot higher than what they were seeded.
Absolutely.
It's a wide open field. I think it's more wide open this year than last year. And I said last year before the tournament started, we've got a chance to see more upsets in this tournament than we've ever seen. Philip, I'm saying it again this year. We've got a chance to see more upsets this year than we've ever seen in this tournament.
I agree. And the one thing we really kind of knew last year, or thought we knew last year, was that Dexter was the best team in the tournament. Dexter had probably the best player in the individual player, all-around player in the tournament. Maybe not the best scorer, because Tristan Johnson was just amazing in his ability to put the ball in the basket last year. Almost set the record for most points in a tournament. But with Cole Nichols, they had probably the best all-around player in the tournament, and they cruised through the tournament. They won convincingly last year, but they lost a lot from that team, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. One of the other things we're going to talk about as we go through discussing each individual team is we're going to talk about the all-tournament team from last year. Again, as the last 2 years, the folks who select that, mostly the media, who's there for the whole week watching these games, selected 13 members instead of 12. Normally it's been 12, and they try to get 12, but there was a tie. And so we ended up with 13 members of that team. Only 6 of those will be back this year, or back on their team. So you're talking about teams who lost 7 really, really quality players that were, in fact, 7 of the best 12 players or 13 players in that tournament. So we'll talk about who those teams have lost and who they've and who's back for those teams as we go through.
Yeah, and quick note for some people at that tournament. As you come to that tournament, of course, you cannot park on the west side right in front of the gymnasium. That's for the teams loading the buses, things like that. And also across the way, I think they've got that fenced off now. There's no parking to the north right there. So they've got additional parking to the east. They've got the lot right there attached to the school. They've got another lot to the east. They've got the lot to the south of the school. And then the road, once you pass in front of the school, it goes west. You can go on past the school, and there's parking there you can get into. But please do not try to park there in front of that school. That just makes it a complication.
It does.
And then who knows, you may get a visit from a law enforcement there saying you need to move that car.
And I like the fact that now they've, instead of coming in and saying over the PA, they read off a license plate, because I never can remember what my license plate is anymore. And anybody that doesn't have a personalized plate, most of them aren't going to know what their license plate number is. But they'll come in and they'll actually say, Bobby Alford, you need to move your car. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. They called my name. I better go move my car. So, but yeah, don't block somebody's driveway. Don't block somebody in. But just have common sense when you go to park up there.
Hey, I hope they don't call my name, because I'll have a headset on and I want to
That's
hear it.
true.
My car will be gone.
That's true. They'll tow your car away. So, all right. Well, we're excited. We're anticipating having the seeds in here shortly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take about a minute or two break. And when we come back, we will have seed number 1 for you in the 67th annual Bloomfield Christmas Tournament.
Saying our inventory is growing every day. Between all of our 4 stores, we'll have 400 units in stock at any given time.
Whether you're looking to buy GMC, Chevrolet, Buick, or Ford, we look forward to serving you and your family for years to come.
Mathis Funeral Home of Dexter and Bernie strives to provide their community with the accommodations and services needed to relieve your family during times of loss. For more information, give them a call and see how Mathis Funeral Home can help meet your expectations in celebrating your loved one.
All right, welcome back to the official Christmas tournament, Bloomfield Christmas Tournament seeding show, right here from the studio in North Malden, Missouri. We're excited to be joining you, and we have the first seed. So drum roll, please. The first seed is Puxico. Puxico Indians, coached by Bryant Fernetti. They are part of the Stoddard County Conference. They're undefeated. They're in fact the only team coming into the seedings that are undefeated. They're 6-0. They've had big wins over both Twin Rivers and Risco, 2 really quality teams. Those were both in the Bernie tournament. So let's look at what they did last year. Last year they came in as an 8 seed. They lost to number 9 East Prairie in the first round, and then they zoomed through the consolation round, winning against Gideon, Portageville, and Bloomfield. All really good quality teams last year. Bloomfield had that great run in the tournament. Portageville was the number 4 seed that got knocked off, and then they beat them in the next round. So Puxico showed us a lot last year. They're a solid team, a really good team this year. We had them at Bernie. Historically, and we're going to give you a little bit of history on these teams and what they've done in the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament. This team's made it to the championship game twice, this school, over the years, winning a championship in 1989. 1989, that team, led by Brian Blackburn, still holds the tournament record, averaging almost 95 points a game for the tournament. Blackburn himself averaged 35.5 points. He's the one who was challenged last year by Tristan Johnson, came up just a little bit short. But think about averaging 35.5 points a game. There may not be a player that does that this year, but tell us what you see from the Puxico Indians.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, there is not going to be a player from Puxico that averages 35 points a game. It's not going to happen, and the reason why, this team is absolutely loaded. When I look at Portageville, and trust me, I got a lot to say, Puxico, when I look at them, I've got a lot to say about this team. They are a really good team. I had them as my 1 seed coming in as well. I think this team, they've got a replacement for everybody on the floor who starts for them except Skylar Zimmerman. He's a big kid down low. His rebounding abilities and what he does, he's going to be a tough matchup for anybody. But I can tell you, when you're bringing kids off the bench like a Landon Burchard or a Mason Parsley, these kids know their roles and they come in and they do it well. Parsley's a kid who may give you 0 points to 13 points a night as he's done this year. When he does it, though, he is fresh legs coming in, and that's another deal. When they come in, they are extremely fresh. They can press you all night long. Who cares if one kid gets in foul trouble because they've got another one there. Cason Long, what a defensive player he has been for this team this year also. The sophomores they have, Jet Hancock, Landon Burchard, Thomas Birch can score from 84 on the floor. I really like this team, and I tell you, the last time they won this tournament, Philip, 1989 on a buzzer beater from Sean Hazel. Tomahawk chop from Puxico Indians. I like them.
All right. Well, and they're a team that's going to be a tough matchup for anybody because of the fact that they can keep bringing players in. They've got so many players that they're gonna wear any team down. So.
And I think the fans show up, and I hope they do. I hope they have the Tomahawk chop going loud in that gymnasium. It will be a fun atmosphere.
It's good. It's going to be either way. So our next seed number 2, we can write it in our bracket. East Prairie Eagles. The East Prairie Eagles coming out of the Scott Mississippi County Conference. They are 6-1 on the season. Big wins against Hayti, Crothersville, and Kennett. They won that Gideon tournament over Kennett. That's the one that had to be moved down to Kennett for the championship game. So they beat Kennett on their home court. A huge win for them. Their only loss was to Hayti by 1 point. After they'd already beaten them once by 1 point. Now that was a game you said was a little bit tough for them because they were up big, and then they ended up letting Hayti come back and beat them. They won last night, a big win last night against Oak Ridge. Last year, they were kind of the surprise team of the tournament. They were the number 9 seed. They upset Puxico and then lost to Dexter, the eventual champion, in round 2. But then they went all the way through and won 5th place, defeating the number 2 seed Gideon. I mean, that's a pretty impressive run for them. They return Noah Johnson, who was a sophomore last year on the all-tournament team. They're a really solid team coming back. And so what do you got on East Prairie, Bobby?
I think this East Prairie team is a team that's poised to make a run in this tournament. I've got them, for me, I think they'll show up on Friday night and play. And I think they may show up in the areas that their experience and their size makes them a tough out right there. And look, this team, they run a really solid half-court offense. When they can get in the flow of their offense and they don't speed up their game, they're going to be tough in that. They got 2 big guys down low who can hurt you. And look, their combo guards out top, Ty Wallace and Connor Markham. Connor Markham is one of the top scorers in his area. Right. That kid is a nightmare for any coach to have to figure out what to do with him. And then you've got to worry about the post play down there. Right. They're going to be tough. My concern was that game, when you lose to a Hayti team at home, you were up 17 in that game. Right. You lose that's a little bit of a worry. That's a focus issue of not knowing where they needed to be in that game and the offense they need to run. That's an area right there you really got to watch it for your East Prairie coming into this. Sure. Because anybody can upset you.
And we weren't there. I don't know if they were in foul trouble. I don't know what happened that night. But obviously, whatever it is, their coach is going to have them prepared, ready to go. All right, that brings us to the number 3 seed. I'm going to write it into my bracket. That's the Kennett Indians. Kennett Indians play in the SEMO Conference tournament, or SEMO Conference. We had them in the SEMO Conference tournament. They welcome a new head coach this year, Fred Garman. No stranger to Kennett. Fred was an all-state player back several years ago when he led Kennett to the quarterfinals. Before they ran into a really tough Cardinal Ritter team right before they got an opportunity to go to the Final Four. They're 3-4 in the season. Their wins were against Delta C7 and then South Pemiscot in the Gideon tournament. They beat Dexter in the first round, the kind of play-in round of the SEMO Conference. Their losses, they lost to East Prairie in that championship game we mentioned. at Gideon, well, actually at Kennett, but the Gideon tournament, and then lost to Sykeston and Jackson at the SEMO Conference tournament, then lost to Charleston last night. Charleston, a really tough team. All those teams, mostly bigger schools, and so their 3-4 record may be a little deceptive when it comes to how good this team really is. Last year, they came in as the number 7 seed. They upset Bernie, the number 2 seed, in the second round. Then they lost to Doniphan. It was the eventual second-place winner, and then lost to Malden in the third-place game. They put a freshman on the all-tournament team last year, Ashton Dismukes. He'll be back. He's kind of their team leader this year. This team, their history in this tournament is extensive. In fact, with the exception of Dexter, which we'll get to in a little bit, this team has the most appearances in a championship. They've been in 16 championship games, winning it 9 times. So they've got a great history in this tournament. What do you see about this team this year, Bobby?
You know, first of all, Ashton Dismukes, he's a kid, a star was born right in front of our eyes last year at this very tournament. And that kid impressed everyone so much so that he made the all-tournament team. Look, this kid, get the basketball in his hands. He can beat man-to-man. He can beat zone, and he loves to finish at the rim. He attacks downhill, so you've got to have help defense coming no matter where he's at on the floor. Also, Zakarian Taylor, he really moves across the baseline well. He's another one. So just because Dismukes goes toward the rim, Taylor may slide in right there, a dump pass. That's a matchup problem for a lot of teams because of the speed they use. Deshaun Wilson, he's a leader on that team. I really like his pull-up jumpers more so inside the arc than outside. He can shoot it from anywhere on the floor. He has got a really good pull-up jump shot. But not a lot of points in a post. You know, they're not a team that's going to post up and beat you on the block right there. Just not a lot of entry passes. So, you know, I think you almost want to force them into a zone look and try to take threes. They were hot and cold from that area. So, you know, and the other deal I've got about them, where do the rebounds come from? This team is not a huge team, a tall team. I think that's a matchup problem for them as they face a Puxico team who rebounds well and a East Prairie team. Those are issues that they've got to figure out against teams during the game. But anybody who knows me, I'm a huge Fred Garman fan. The guy knows basketball. He loves basketball. If anybody can figure it out, Fred Garman's your guy.
Absolutely, absolutely. We look forward to seeing them in the first round at 12:30 on that first day of the year. So our number 4 seed, that was number 3. Number 4, you can pencil in, are the Malden Green Wave. Malden Green Wave, coached by Mike Kilgore, come out of the Boot Hill Conference. You know, they're 5-2 on the season. They came into the Clarkton Holiday Tournament last week with only 1 loss, and as the number 1 seed, they got knocked off by the Risco Tigers in the semifinals this past week. So they lost to Risco. They had a loss to Dexter early in the season here in Malden. Last year at the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament, they came in as the number 5 seed. They did what they were supposed to do. They defeated Richland. They defeated South Pemiscot. Then they lost to Dexter, which was the number 1 seed in the semifinals. And then they defeated Kennett. So they were the 3rd place team. Came in seeded 5, ended up 3rd place. They placed 3 underclassmen on the all-tournament team.
Yeah, and that's a tough deal, you know.
Absolutely.
When you're there and you're placing 3 underclassmen on the all-tournament team, that's one of those deals when you're talking about at the seeding meetings and these coaches talk, they know those 3 kids are back.
3 guys are back.
That hangs in your head.
And those 3 are Marcus Burton, who's actually already a 2-time all-tournament performer at Bloomfield, and Quamarius Farmer, Q Farmer, as everybody calls him, because the people have trouble saying his name. He's also a 2-time returning all-tournament team, and joined by Peyton Woodard last year. This team's had 8 appearances in the championship game. 5 championships, mostly in the 80s, 84, 85, 87, and 88, and then again in 2006. So, you know, they may be due at this point. Let's see what we can see. They placed 2 players on last night's all-tournament team at Clarkton, Q Farmer and Peyton Woodard. So what do you think about this team, Bobby, going forward?
You know, this is an interesting seed for me. Watching Malden the last couple of weeks in their play, I actually dropped them to the 6th seed in my bracket. So I think this is a little higher seed than what they played. Now, their talent is there. They've got talent all over the place. Q Farmer, Peyton Woodard, Trey Miller, Robinson, the big man there, Marcus Burton. I'm going to tell you there's another big man, though, that nobody's talking about, and that's T.J. Smith. He was the best big man in the tournament for them down here at Clarkton, and his size, he's a tough matchup, and his footwork is great. The other thing I look at them, they have to play good defense and stay out of foul trouble. That's what got them in the Dexter game. Dexter shot so many free throws, as you noted to me last night.
Right.
That's what carried Dexter the distance in that game. And you know, Burton has been a perennial star at this tournament.
He has.
I don't think he's played to his potential yet this year. I think his 0 of 8 from the field last night, only 4 points.
Yeah.
Didn't make the all-tournament team. He's a kid who's got to play big. I can tell you, if he disappears at this tournament like at Clarkton, look out. Malden's going to be an early exit.
I remember 2 years ago when he kind of came out as the star when they upset Dexter 2 years ago. He had one of the better games that I've seen from a big man at that tournament up there. He was really solid. And so we'll see where they go. This team could roll through, or they could be upset. We never know. That's why we play the games.
He's a rebounding and defensive blocking machine. He
Absolutely.
had some big-time blocks these last 2 nights down there at Clarkton.
Absolutely. All right, so that brings us to number 5. We've got the top 4. The top seed in each part of the tournament are set. That brings us to seed number 5, the Dexter Bearcats. Dexter Bearcats led by Coach Chad Allen. If we were playing coaches versus players, clearly he'd be the center. He's the tallest coach in Southeast Missouri, and we'd feed the post all night long if he was our center. They come out of both the Stoddard County Conference and the SEMO Conference. They're 2-4 in the season, but as always, and as I mentioned with Kennett, that their record can be a little bit deceiving because of the fact that they play in that SEMO Conference, and we have that SEMO Conference tournament right off the bat. And so every team that they've played, with the exception of Richland, who's in this tournament, is bigger than any other team in this tournament, essentially. They've played Kennett, they've played Charleston, New Madrid, Jackson. You know, those are all big schools. Those are all quality schools that have a great history of basketball dominance. Their big win came against Malden. We mentioned that. I think that win against Malden probably moved them up in this bracket. They also beat Richland this week, and Richland had came into that game with a lot of talk from a lot of folks about how good they are this year and what they can do. I mentioned, so last year they were the top seed. They pretty much rolled through the tournament. We saw them last year. They were really solid in this tournament. Historically, they have 14 Bloomfield Christmas Tournament championships, including 7 in a row at one point. They won last year. 5 other times they've been in the championship game. Here's a stat for you. Almost 30% of all championship games of the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament have included the Dexter Bearcats.
Wow.
That's a pretty big stat. But they graduated a lot of their scoring last year. They graduated Cole Nichols, but a lot of other folks who contributed points and minutes on that team last year. So what does this team have? There are a lot of underclassmen moving up. So what do we see from them, Bobby?
Well, you know, an interesting fact you bring up there is who they lost. We talk about Cole Nichols, but I'm going to tell you the greatest role player they had on that team last year was Chris Stone, his defense up top. I think Dexter right now is a team searching for identity. I think they may be finding that because their inside presence they used last night, but they've got to have more kids to identify roles and step into those roles that, hey, not every kid on this team is a 15 points per night scorer. And I think when they learn those things, this team will evolve and get better. You know, they don't have a whole lot of experience playing together because their 2 seniors really were behind all these seniors that graduated last year, and they were on the varsity squad. All these other kids were in JV, maybe 8th grade. Right. So, you know, they didn't have the experience playing together. I think they get better as the ball goes on. But one area of concern, if I'm Dexter going into this, they don't have a true point guard, so ball handling can be an issue. When teams are fast, like a Puxico or whoever they may match up with, the full court press, I think, gives Dexter problems in this tournament.
Okay.
But, hey, look, Chad Allen's a winner. He's won on the girls' side. He's come over to the boys' side. He wins there. He's been in this game a long time, and he's played against a lot of good competition himself. I bet he figures it out.
I think he's as good a coach as there is in Southeast Missouri, and it'll be interesting to see what he can put together. He can get quite a bit out of less talent sometimes than a lot of other coaches. That a lot of other coaches will run up against them with a whole lot more talent and come out on the losing side. So our next seed coming in is number 6, and that's the Van Buren Bulldogs. The Van Buren Bulldogs, coached by Coach Jacob Black. They come out of the Black River Conference, the only team out of the Black River Conference in this tournament. They're 5-1 on the season. There's been a lot of talk about Van Buren coming in. They've had wins against Gideon, Clarkton, and Bunker early in the season. So folks knew they were undefeated, but we weren't really sure exactly whether, or they'd only had one loss. They lost to Eminence in overtime, and Eminence is a pretty solid team. So no one really knew where they fit, but then they pulled off a great victory for them against Twin Rivers, another highly touted team in this tournament. And then last night they knocked off Ellington. So they're coming into this with a couple of wins moving forward. Last year they were the 11th seed. They did what 11 seeds do. They lost the first round to Twin Rivers, and then unfortunately they got knocked off by that Hayti team last year. So they struggled a little bit last year in the tournament. I don't expect the same kind of results this year. So we'll see. What can we expect, do you think, from these folks? Well, Van Buren.
If you're a Van Buren fan, or if you're looking for information on Van Buren, remember the word, they're young.
Yep.
But this group is really talented at the sophomore class is. Now, that can be a plus and a minus. For your future, that's great. But for the here and now, in big moments in games, sophomores can make young player mistakes. But I can tell you, there's something eye-catching about them because in their respective class, they're receiving top 10 votes. I don't think they got into the side of the top 10 this past week, but they received votes for that. So enough to catch your eye. A big win over Twin Rivers on the eve of the tournament seeding. I think that was a big deal for them. Also, Ethan Van Wagner, he's a good player, and as the senior they've got, Benjamin Hawkins, look for them to be the force behind them. Can the early season success bleed over into the Christmas tournament for this team? A lot of unknown coming in. I can tell you, I bet they get a lot of hits on their live streams to go back and look at this team to learn about it.
Probably so. I talked to Coach Cole McBroom at Clarkton last night, and he played them early in the season in their little Current River Classic that they do over there Thanksgiving weekend, and he said the Van Wagner kid played against them, Elijah Van Wagner, and he's a solid player. But that the coach over there says that this Hawkins kid who did not get to play against him, Benjamin Hawkins, a senior, did not play against them in that first tournament. But he says he's the real deal. So we'll see how that plays out. The Van Buren Bulldogs, our 6th seed. So that moves us to our 7th seed. Our 7th seed are the Portageville Bulldogs. Another Bulldog, several Bulldogs in a row here. So the Portageville Bulldogs, they're coached by T.J. Smith. Portageville comes out of the Boot Heel Conference. They're 3-2 on the season. They had a really good Clarkton tournament this week. They impressed a lot of folks, I think. They came in just 2-1. They'd only had 3 games. One of those was in the River Bend that we had early in the season with them. I thought they looked really good in that, playing against Covington, Tennessee. Just literally 6 days off the football field, because a lot of these basketball players also play football at Portageville. And so they knocked off North Pemiscot and then East Carter County in the Clarkton tournament before losing last night in the championship game to Risco. So last year at the Bloomfield Christmas tournament, I don't think they would dispute the fact that they were pretty disappointed in their performance last year. They came in as a number 4 seed, expected to be playing for 3rd or 1st, and ended up not even playing on night number 4. They lost. They were upset by South Pemiscot. Then they defeated Richland, but then lost to Puxico in the consolation semifinals. So didn't even make it to night number 4. Don't expect that to happen again, but didn't expect that last year. Their history here is pretty substantial. 11 championship game appearances, 3 championships, 1990, 1992, and then again in 2021. So they're a solid team. They placed 2 players on the all-tournament team at Clarkton this week, Jamarion Smith and Aaron Dunlap. So what do you see after watching them play this week, Bobby? What do you see out of the Portageville Bulldogs?
Well, this Portageville team comes in a little bit of an unknown. It's been a short season for them so far in practices, and I think that is showing in the seedings right here that, you really don't know what to expect from this Portageville team. For me, I'm a little surprised. I had Portageville as my 4th seed in this tournament coming in. And the reason, they got so many different kids who can contribute. One kid that caught my eye in that tournament was the Kellum kid, who we'll talk about later in the broadcast, but he did some things. But I think Jamarion Smith has got to be the leader on this team. He showed me he can get to the rim when he needs to last night, so I thought that was interesting. Against the zone, when Risco switched to the zone, which I thought they should do, Smith got in. He was the guy making it happen.
Right.
But if I'm an opposing team, look, here's what I'm saying. They struggled last night shooting a 3. I think I play them in a zone more so to make them show me they can hit those shots. when they get inside near the rim, a kid like Smith, you're not going to stop him. If he can get through the teeth of that defense, he's going to score. But I can tell you right now, zones will give them problems. It's a worry where they land in the seeding, because at a 4 seed, they get a lot better seeding the first round. But dropping to what the 7 seed right now, I think that could be a little bit of a matchup problem for Portageville, so watch out there.
Yep. We'll see who that 7-10 matchup is. That may be one of our intriguing matchups that we look at later on. You mentioned Kellum. He was at Risco last year. He was an all-district performer at Risco. Moved to Portageville this year. Definitely contributes. They had another player that moved in from Bernie from a couple years ago. Those two guys are both contributors to that team, and I think will make a difference moving forward.
Interesting too about Portageville this tournament. The first game that they had a cakewalk, they scored 100 points. Right. The second game, they played a slow-paced game against East Prairie.
East Carter.
Or East Carter, rather.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I don't know that this team can keep up.
Yep.
And last night, they come out firing out of the gate, running the floor hard, playing a faster pace. And they lost to a very good Risco team. So, I don't think that hurts them in my eyes there. It just, who are the Portageville Bulldogs right now? Right. Do they run? Do they play a slower pace? They'll be an interesting watch this time.
They will. And it seems like they can match up against just about anybody. So we'll see how that plays out. So our next seed, our 8 seed. So here we go. We're about ready for that 8-9, that middle matchup, and it's always intriguing to me. It's the teams that get to play probably get to play against the Puxico Indians in round number 2. The first of those two is the Twin Rivers Royals. Twin Rivers, coached by Seth McBroom, out of the Ozark Foothills Conference. They're 4-4 on the season. So they played in that Bernie tournament. They defeated Campbell and Neelyville. They lost to Puxico in that tournament. They had another loss to Malden, and then to a big loss to Malden, and then they lost to Van Buren right before this tournament. And I think that game, that Twin Rivers against Van Buren game, probably decided which team was going to be where they were in this. I think Van Buren, if Twin Rivers run that game, Van Buren and Twin Rivers might have been switched in where their seedings fell. Their losses are, as I mentioned, Puxico, Malden, Van Buren, and then to Summersville. Again, Summersville, a really good team, a district champion last year and a really solid team. They do have a quality win against Hayti, which I think was a big win for them, as well as a win against Zenith Hornsville. Last year at this tournament, they came in seeded 6th. So last year, a little bit higher seed than this year. Defeated Van Buren opening round. Then they lost to Doniphan and then Bernie to be eliminated on day number 3. So they're hoping that they can move past that and make it to day number 4. They lost senior Colton Hargraves, who was a member of the all-tournament team last year. He graduated. They've made 7 championship game appearances, 3 tournament championship wins over the years. What do you see out of this Twin Rivers Royals team? We've had them before this year, so what do you see?
Well, I'll tell you, anything that Twin Rivers wants to hope on to get in championship night, I think it's going to ride on the shoulders of Luke Hester. Yep. Look, this kid's got to stay out of foul trouble because he's very key to their defense, and he's also key to the rebounding they do. He's a fine player down low. I think he goes about 6'3", but he matches up very well, and he plays hard in there at 6'3". One thing he does, I notice against the zone, when teams play them as a zone defense, he operates on that baseline extremely well. If he is on that baseline, you better find him if you're playing against this team because he's going to catch that ball, he's going to crab step, go up, and he's going to score, and he can do it in bunches against teams like that. And also, they got a kid, Carter Williams. I believe he just played out of his mind out there at Bernie. He can drain him from deep, and he don't need a whole lot of time to think about hitting him. He is a scorer, and he can score in bunches as well. This is a team who can potentially hurt you when you think you're going to play them in zone. Because, like I said, the Williams kid can sit there and drain them. And also, Hester is a nightmare matchup down low. At 6'3", I guarantee he can play with the 6'5" and 6'6" kids in this tournament when you give him just a hair of space to operate.
All right, well, let's see who the Twin Rivers Royals match up against. We've made it through the first 8. Halfway through our seedings, they match up against the Richland Rebels. Richland Rebels out of the Stoddard County Conference, coached by Matt Klein. They're 4-2 on the season. They're a team that a lot of folks have kind of looked at this year and really feel like that they've got they're a quality team that can really, I think some folks think can really make some noise in this tournament. Their 2 losses, their 4 wins come against Scott County Central, Chaffee, Bell City, and Gideon. all good wins, but their 2 losses come against really, really tough teams. They lost to Kelly, which is still undefeated, a really good team, and they lost to Dexter by 6. Those are really good matchups for them. I think a team that may surprise some folks. That 9 seed maybe gives them a chance to, go up against 2 really quality teams in Twin Rivers, and then if they can beat them, go up against Puxico. So last year in the Bloomfield Christmas tournament, they were the number 12 seed. They lost to number 5 seed Malden first round, and then to number 4 seed Portageville in the second round. So they had a tough road. I mean, they had to play 2 top 5 seeds in the first 2 rounds to be put out of the tournament. They definitely want to. Their goal is to stay much longer than they did last year. Their history, they've had 4 championship game appearances and 4 tournament championship wins. The last time they were in a championship game was 1977. So those are early on in the tournament. They're looking to try to get back to those winning ways if they can. So what do you know about the Richland Rebels? I know one of their players had gotten hurt against Dexter, but I think he's going to be back. So tell us what you think about the Richland Rebels.
Yeah, that player is Tucker Hughes. He was injured in the Dexter game, and they lost that game to Dexter only by, 5 or 6? And with that's Hughes on the bench in the second half, he is a big presence for them down low. I think he's going to rebound well. Hey, the kid can get up and dunk, and hopefully we'll get to see that in this tournament. But a team that I had seeded at 9, they come in at 9. One of their better seeds in a while. This was a 12 seed last year in experience. This is a 9 seed this year coming in who can, if they had beat Dexter, I would have them a lot closer to a 5 seed than a 9. That's how close that comes. But who else can step on this Richland Rebel team? Right. And I think you got to look at Hunter Sanders. When this kid crosses half court, he is a threat to shoot the ball and knock them down. When he gets hot from 3, look out, because the crowd and the team will feed off that. I just wonder if he can stay hot enough to carry this team to a Friday night appearance. It would be their first Friday night appearance, like I said, in a while, but I think this is a team who can make noise in this tournament.
Absolutely. So we've got that part of the bracket set, 1, 16, 8, and 9. So we can look at those matchups. We've got that moves us on to our number 10 seed. Who's our number 10 seed? The Hayti Indians. The Hayti Indians coming in, they're coached by Craig Rogers. They come out of the Boot Hill Conference. They're 2-2 on the season, only played 4 games. They lost to East Prairie in that Gideon tournament, and then they lost to Twin Rivers on the 12th this week. So that was a big loss for them, those 2. But then they avenged that loss to East Prairie, came back and beat them at East Prairie on the 8th. They also defeated Gideon in that Gideon tournament. So they've had a couple of good wins, so let's look at that. Last year in the Bloomfield Christmas tournament, they came in seeded 14th, which is a lot lower than what they're seeded this year. They lost to eventual finalist Doniphan in the first round. Then they upset Van Buren and then lost to Bloomfield. So they didn't make it to the final night. One of the few teams who placed a player on the all-tournament team that didn't play on the last night of the tournament. And that player was another freshman, Ashton Dismukes from Kennett and Robert Farmer from Hayti, made the all-tournament team as freshmen. He's back this year, scrappy, quick little guard who handles the ball well, plays really well on defense. Their history in this tournament, they've had 4 appearances in the championship game, winning the championship in 2007, and then again more recently in 2018. So what do you see from this 2023 version of the Hayti Indians?
Well, I think we got notes mixed up. I think Farmer was South Pim, if I'm correct.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, you're right.
But they got another guard who is a really good one, and that's Javante Payne. This kid is a scorer. He can get inside and score. He shoots it well from outside. And this team, when I watched them rewatch that East Prairie game, they're scrappy. And I'm going to tell you, as a 10 seed, I had them a little bit higher in my bracket at 8, but as a scrappy team, that's a scary word because that means they get after it. They're not afraid of you when they play scrappy like that. They can frustrate teams and slide in there and win a game they probably shouldn't just because how hard they play. They're going to create a lot of pressure and a lot of turnovers there. The one thing I see there is they can't shoot too many threes as a team. They're smaller, so they struggle to get to the rim sometimes. Don't fall in love with the threes. Use your team's speed. I think that'll benefit them offensively getting to the rim and defensively creating turnovers. But Hayti, they've had some good wins there. They show they can come back and beat an East Prairie team. look, right now that's a 10 versus a 2 that they beat right there. Anybody's tournament.
And that was a huge win. I mean, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about East Prairie that East Prairie was up 17 and they came back and beat them. I mean, that's
on their home court.
That's a big win. That's a huge win for Hayti on their resume. So that brings us to number 11. Number 11, I just jumped the gun on that, Bobby. That's South Pemiscot. I was already talking about Robert Farmer, and he is the South Pemiscot point guard. So South Pemiscot comes in as our number 11 seed. Let's see, I got to find them in my book. Sorry about that. Coach Jordan McGowan is their coach. They come out of the Boot Hill Conference. They are also 2-2. They lost to Kennett by only 4 points in the early on in the season. They defeated Zenith Hornersville in Delta C7. They also had a loss to Westwood Baptist. A lot of folks don't know a lot about Westwood Baptist. They're not a Misha school. They're a Misha affiliated school, Christian school out of Poplar Bluff. But you know what? They're a really good team this year. They played really well in some early tournaments. So that loss is not a bad loss for this South Pemiscot team. Last year they came in as a 13 seed, a couple seeds lower than they are this year. They were the team we mentioned earlier that upset the number 4 Portageville last year. They surprised a lot of folks. They did not make it to final night. They lost to Malden and then lost to East Prairie. But they played really well. Again, as I mentioned, one of the few teams that placed a player on the all-tournament team that didn't make it to the final night with Farmer. He's a quick, scrappy little guard, really solid player. As a freshman, back as a sophomore this year. They've made the championship game 2 times in their history, one championship in 1982. So let's see what you think about the South Pemiscot Bulldogs, Bobby.
Well, I don't know a whole lot about this team, but here's what I can tell you. You got to find out how to guard Robert Farmer. And here's my other note on them. You got to figure out how to guard Robert Farmer. I mean, he is a player. He's fast. He can shoot. He can get to the rim. He can do it all. He's probably the flashiest player we're going to see in this tournament. He's going to show you some skills. And right away last year, he caught my eye early.
Yes.
And I thought he caught everybody's eye, and it carried him to that all-tournament team by carrying this Bulldog team on his back.
I agree.
Expect them to attack the rims in as many ways as they can. And they'll give you a lot of defensive looks. I think one thing that Jim and I talked about last night in the broadcast, there were several times that teams changed their defenses coming out of timeouts. I think the Bulldogs can create turnovers and opportunities to get layups, get themselves back in the games by doing just that very thing.
Absolutely.
Bigger question is, they showed it last year. They can come from the bottom. They'll have to do it again this year.
Right.
Can they make another run in this tournament?
Yep. Can they? So the question then becomes, can they knock off Van Buren? Can they be a giant killer 2 years in a row? So we'll see.
I think that's one we need to take a deeper look at.
We
get it along in the brackets when we put it up on the board.
Absolutely.
That's going to be an interesting matchup there because, Van Buren's played some smaller teams and they hadn't got over here with the big boys yet.
I agree.
And we don't know about this Bulldog team. That is a really good one.
Right.
They won.
It'll be fun. All right. So that brings us to a team that's in a sort of a place where they're not used to. It's maybe even uncomfortable for them to be way down in the bottom half of the bracket. But you know what this sets up? The number 12 seed are the Bernie Mules. The Bernie Mules are coached by Jason Long, come out of the Stoddard County Conference. They are 4-3 on the season. They've had wins against Winona, Bloomfield, Clarkton, and then a big win against Bell City on Thursday of this week. Their losses came to Neelyville and Campbell in their own tournament there in Bernie, and to Woodland, which is a really quality loss. I mean, that's a really, really good team. But I think, they've won some games. They've started to put the ball in the basket a little bit. Last year, they came in as the number 2 seed. They were upset by Kennett in the second round, then they lost to East Prairie in the 5th place game last year. So they finished a little lower than what they had hoped and expected. They're basically 2 years off of a Final Four run, but that whole team's gone, and these are all young kids now. In the history of the tournament, they've made the final game 11 times with 3 championships, one in '93, one in 2008, and one in 2014. They did put 2 players on the all-tournament team last year, Micah Schooley, who was an amazing shooter, and then all-stater Tristan Johnson, who was just an all-around great scorer for the Bernie Mules. Both of those young men graduated last year, so they're having to fill that gap in this team. So, Bobby, tell me what you see from the Bernie Mules.
Yeah, I tell you, losing those players they lost hurt them tremendously. I think Bernie versus Kennett last year in the tournament was probably the best game of the tournament. Tristan Johnson just played out of his mind, and he had, I think, 41 points that night. And it was just a masterful performance. But, this year, this team lacks size and they lack experience. And I think that's going to make it tough on Bernie in this tournament. Right now they're just struggling scoring, shooting poorly from the floor. They do have kids who can sink threes, so you can't sit in a zone and expect to just beat Bernie by playing them that way. But they're going to have a lot of contributions from freshmen John Aycock and Chase Geiling.
Right.
Those kids are going to have to continue to step up and play big minutes on a varsity level. That's not favorable when you're not a very good team right now to begin with. It's not favorable to put freshmen in that situation. Right. But hey, here's where we are right now, and as they get to play with those kids more and they gel, you'll see them step up. But good things are on the way. They won their JV tournament. They look good. They've just got to keep developing, keep the winner's mindset. Could be a tough tournament, but I can tell you the future looks bright for the Mules.
Absolutely. They've got an exceptional freshman class that has, they've been good all the way through from the time they were younger in junior high. They've been really good, and they continue to be. I tell you what, you couldn't have scripted it any better for the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament, round number 1, Dexter versus Bernie to kick things off.
That's what I was going to say. If Bernie needs any motivation, it's Dexter versus Bernie.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say that's going to be the biggest crowd, maybe day one we have,
I think
12
you're right.
versus 5, because usually you don't have it as much, but it's Dexter Bernie.
And it's middle of the afternoon, 3:30 on the day after Christmas. It doesn't get much better than that for the first round of the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament.
I wonder, have we ever had that matchup in a tournament before?
I don't know. Probably not in the first round, because most of the time they're used to being in different places than they are right now. Never that far apart. All right, guys, we got 4 seeds left. 4 seeds left in this tournament. Number 13, the host Bloomfield Wildcats. The Bloomfield Wildcats are our number 13 seed. So they're coached by Brian Sindel, first year at Bloomfield. They come out of the Stoddard County Conference. They're 3-3 on the season, but you know what? They're on a little bit of a winning streak. They've won 3 games in a row, which I honestly think moved them up. In fact, moved them over Holcomb, which we haven't talked about yet, because Holcomb actually beat Bloomfield early in the season in that Bernie tournament by 1 point. And so so they move over a team that beat them because I think these 3 wins they've had right in a row. They've beaten Chaffee, Gideon, and then Advance just last night. So 3 big wins in a row after the 3 losses that they took in the Bernie tournament. They lost to Risco, which is not a bad loss at all. They lost to Bernie, and then they lost to Holcomb in that Bernie tournament. We had all those games here on Aycorp Sports. Last year at the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament, they came in seeded 15, but they surprised a lot of folks. They upset number 10 Holcomb, and then they defeated Hayti before they lost to Puxico in the consolation championship game. That was a really nice run for Bloomfield. The home fans got to see them play on the last night of the tournament. They had a senior, Hunter Moore, who made the all-tournament team. He's not back. So what do you see from this Bloomfield Wildcats team, Bobby, that they can take away that's positive, especially on this 3-game winning streak?
Well, they started as a 15 seed last year, finished as the 9, I believe. They were playing on Friday. How many times does that happen? It doesn't really, but I'll tell you, they're a hard team for me to read right now. Are they going to be the team that shows up and can score like they have the last 3 wins, or are they going to be the team that showed up in a Bernie Invitational and struggled to score? The biggest thing for Bloomfield right now is take care of the basketball. I think they need to play a slower game. Don't get to throwing around everywhere. Play a half-court game if you can. Move that thing up smartly up the floor. Take care of it. See if you can score a couple of baskets. But I tell you, this team always finds a way to perform in this tournament on their home floor. People show up for Bloomfield in this tournament. They always do. So my guess is today they don't finish where they seeded. I think they'll finish higher than their seed again this year.
They're definitely always motivated to make a run in this tournament. So our next seed, 14, are those Holcomb Hornets we just mentioned. Holcomb, that had defeated Bloomfield earlier in the season, comes in as our number 14 seed. The Holcomb Hornets, coached by John Hickson. John Hickson returns to the bench after a hiatus of several years. He'd been gone working in other areas of life outside of education, but he's back on the bench at Holcomb. They come out of the Tri-County Conference. They're 2-4 in the season. Their wins were against Bloomfield, we mentioned in the Bernie Invitational Tournament, and Southland, one of their Tri-County Conference opponents. They beat them. They've lost to Puxico and to Campbell, both of whom are quality teams. Those were at the Bernie tournament. And then they've lost to Cena Tornersville and Puxico again. They had Puxico last night, so Puxico took them down again last night. We had them in that Bernie tournament. That was a good win for them. They were a quality win. You're going to talk about the fact that they've got a couple of players back that were not available to them for injuries, other reasons. Last year they came in as a number 10 seed. They lost in the first round to Kennett and then to Bloomfield in the second round, Bloomfield making that run. They haven't been in the tournament maybe as long as others. I think they came into the tournament maybe in 2010 and then almost immediately won the championship in 2012. So they haven't since then challenged for a championship, but let's see what you saw from them during that Bernie tournament and what you expect from them this week.
Well, I think Jacob Reeves Crittenton is their main scorer. He's a guy who's got to get it done for them. I think offensively, if they can send him more ball screens, find ways to get him open in that offense to shoot the ball more, that'll be a big thing for them in this tournament. And he's got help on the way. Point guard Luke Patterson will be back from injury in this game. That's where that has to come from. I think Patterson can make a presence felt, and I think that opens things up for Crittenton. But, at the end of the day, can Crittenton create enough of his own shots? He's more of a three-point shooter, and a lot of times three-point shooters don't create their own shots.
Right.
That could be a problem, but he's going to have to get creative in that offense and help carry Holcomb to a win.
Absolutely. Well, it's exciting to see. Number 15, 2 seeds left. Number 15, the Doniphan Dons. This is a low seed for the Doniphan Dons. In fact, they finished second last year in this tournament. They lost to Dexter. We'll get to that in a second. But they've struggled a little bit this year. They're coached by Hunter Dilbeck. He was an assistant early in the season, but he's their head coach at this point. We got to meet him this week. Really nice coach and working hard with these young men. They come out of the Ozark Foothills Conference. They're 3-4 in the season. They struggled a little bit in the tournament this week. They lost to Malden. They lost to East Carter County. They've lost to Risco this year, and as well as Greenville. Lost to Risco in that tournament as well as Greenville. They're 3 wins. One of which was against Viola early in the season in that Current River tournament. Then they defeated the Clarkton Junior Varsity in that Clarkton tournament last week, and then a big win yesterday against Clarkton in the 5th place game of that tournament. So last year they came in as the number 3 seed. They finished as runner-up, but their all tournament selections were Cameron Barton, who was a senior, and Max Owen, who was a senior, 2 guys who provided a significant amount of their scoring. They lost a significant amount of their scoring from last year. They've played in the championship game 8 times, including last year. They did win in 1997 and 2005, so they've got some great history in this tournament. But they've got a lot to overcome. Emmett Jones was on the all-tournament team last week. He impressed us. What did you see from him this week?
Emmett Jones is a kid who likes to finish at the rim, and this offense, the way it operates, if you're playing man defense against him, look, they're going to send cutter after cutter after cutter through that lane, and when he comes off that cut, he's going to catch that ball, and I'm telling you, he's at the rim in a hurry scoring for them. But the area that concerned me for them is when they got into the three-point shooting. When they went to zone against them, look, Doniphan struggled from outside a lot, and I think that's going to give them problems in this tournament. And another kid that's got to step up besides Emmett Jones, the Haygood kid. Man, he played really good this tournament. I was impressed the way he handled the basketball, and his confidence grew out that tournament. And
Sure.
that's a dangerous word when you start talking about things like that. This is a sophomore, and your confidence grows.
Yep.
He's a kid who's going to help carry them. I don't think they finish as low as they're ranked either. I think they'll finish higher than a 15 seed in this tournament. Again, they don't shoot the 3 well, but they're going to find ways to get the ball inside and to the rim. They've also got some big men down there. I don't know that people are counting on that before their seeds are. They've got 2 big guys in Buffington, and I believe Andrews come in and played last night. Look, these guys are big enough to get rebounds, play well defensively in their form. I don't like this seed for Doniphan. I think if I'm a 15 versus a 2 right now, I'm a little worried about this Doniphan team. Can they make a little noise and give me a little trouble in this tournament?
Sure, absolutely. All right, so that brings us to our number 16 seed, coached by Keenan Buchanan. Coach Buchanan's back on the bench. He's in administration over there at Gideon, but chose to go back on the bench as the head coach this year. You know, just 8 years ago, he took them to a Final Four with Gideon Bulldogs. They came into the tournament right after that, into this Bloomfield Christmas tournament. They actually came back into the tournament. They'd been in it before, and we'll get to that in a minute. They're 0-5 on the season. They've really struggled so far this year to put points on the board. Again, they're 8 years removed from that Final Four appearance. We'll see if Coach Buchanan makes them a better team just by his presence on the bench, his coolness under pressure, and he knows he's coached a lot of games. They were also our number 16 seed last year. They had to play the eventual champion in Dexter, and then so they're 2 rounds. They had to play the eventual champion of the tournament and the eventual consolation winner in Puxico, our number 1 seed this year. So they had a tough tournament last year. Again, I mentioned they rejoined the tournament 7 years ago. They do have 1 championship appearance when they were in the tournament the first time around. In 1964, they were in the championship game. They lost, but they were in the championship that year. So tell us what you can see from the Gideon Bulldogs, and then we'll break it down a little from there.
Well, I'll tell you, Philip, usually I do my homework on teams, and I did a poor job there. I don't know a whole lot about this Gideon Bulldog team coming in. Coach Buchanan's back. He's coached the game forever. When you have a lot of experience coaching, you look for development on this deal. Right. And as he develops this team and they get better, but, they've got 2 sophomores in Braden Knapp and Landon Weaver. They're going to have those kids to step up and be big in this tournament. Right. But, it's kind of situation last year. They had to play the number 1 seed and then the 1 seed for this year's tournament. Nobody felt sorry for them that last year, and I can tell you these teams aren't going to do it again this year.
That's right.
They're going to go in and play their games against them. Could be a tough tournament here for Gideon, but hey, the name of the game is finish better than you're seeded and get better every day for that team.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that gives us our 16 teams for this tournament. We're going to take a quick break, and then Bobby and I are going to be joined by Garrett Hicks, our resident statistician and SEMO High School savant, basketball savant. We're going to have him in here to talk to us about his, and he and Bobby are going to talk with us about the breakdown of the brackets and how they see some of these matchups coming up in a week. So come back to us in about 2 minutes.
At Focus Bank, we understand your community because it's our community too. With branches across Southeast Missouri and Northeast Arkansas, Focus Bank offers services such as fraud protection, really free checking, and mobile banking that lets you bank simply and securely, anytime, anywhere. Stop by any of our branches or visit us online to open an account today. Plus, you'll receive an awesome free gift just from opening your really free checking account. And when you refer someone who opens an account, you'll both receive a gift. Focus Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Do you need personalized merchandise? Trying to celebrate the season of that big state run? Then Juju Promotions in New Madrid has you covered. Whether it's heat presses, screen printing, or embroidery, we always have an option that will leave you satisfied and looking your best. With seasonal styles and plenty of accessories, there's something here for everyone. So come in and shop around. You'll be welcome with a smile and leave more fashionable than ever. Call us at 573-748-4040 or visit us in New Madrid.
NextEra Energy Resources is the world's largest generator of renewable energy from the wind and sun and a world leader in energy storage. Since 2016, NextEra Energy Resources has invested more than $339 million in Missouri to fuel local economic growth. Today, our company owns and operates one wind energy facility in the state and is looking to invest even more in the Show Me State. We are committed to being a trusted community partner and look forward to providing affordable, clean, renewable energy for generations of Missourians
My name
to
is
come.
Kevin Rossville. I'm a farmer from Prairie County, Arkansas. Been farming since 1991. Started farming with my father-in-law when I got married. We've been raising rice ever since. We've all been looking for something for a change for years. And I think this 263L is going to be the next and up and coming thing for us. It's really going to work well on a lot of different ground and a lot of different farms around here.
Dynagro 263L, available exclusively at Nutrient Ag
SEMO
Solutions.
Health Network, we strive to provide caring and affordable health care while making our patients feel welcome in our warm and friendly atmosphere. With locations throughout Southeast Missouri, we provide medical, dental, OB, and behavioral health services to anyone and everyone that may need it. Visit SEMO Health Network for your wellness exams, COVID and flu vaccinations, lab services, dental exams, counseling, and more. For more information, visit our website and let SEMO Health Network take care of you.
Welcome back to the Aycorp Media Studios here in Malden, Missouri. What an exciting show we've had. We've got our 16 seeds. We welcome in Garrett Hicks here with Bobby and me. We're going to break down some of these matchups for the first round and then maybe look a little bit at what could possibly happen moving forward beyond that first round. So let's start off with what's always an intriguing matchup, Bobby. It's the 8-9 seed. This year it's Twin Rivers versus Richland. So let's start off with that and let's see what do you guys see coming out of that matchup?
I think this could be one of the best games of the opening rounds right here, and it should be. It's an 8-9, but Twin Rivers, the big man down there, I talked about him earlier, Luke Hester. And he gets in, and Tucker Hughes going at it down there, down low. I think that's an interesting matchup. Hughes can score around the rim, and so can Hester. And then you want to defend and deny. I think, foul totals could come into play there. But, Garrett, one thing I see is who is going to guard Carter Williams for Richland. I think that's the matchup that's going to be the most key in this game. I'm looking at Twin Rivers pretty strong in that game right there.
Yeah, for me, this is a really good matchup. One thing that notices me is who's going to guard Luke Hester for Richland. Richland plays his zone mostly, and Luke Hester thrives in zone, so that'll be a really good matchup with how that turns out.
And we talked about that zone, the way he operates, the way he moves. He'll hit the high post and low post. He'll flash high, but he's a kid with good vision, too. He's not a selfish player. You catch it high, you kick it out to Williams for the three. I'm telling you, danger could be on the horizon.
For Richland, they're looking for their first win in this tournament and for a long time, so they really want to make a run in this tournament.
And I think they're two juniors, and Tucker Hughes, Hunter Sanders, they're two who can give them fits as well. I think the key comes down to who stays out of foul trouble in the paint. And, the winner of that game gets the prize of getting to take on probably number 1 seed Puxico. So, you battle that 8-9 game, and then you get, congratulations, you won. Now you get the number 1 seed. So we'll see how that all plays out. That game will be prime time on Tuesday night. That'll be the 8 p.m. game on Tuesday night. So hopefully folks will stick around. If you're not able to be there, watch it right here on Aycorp Sports. A couple of intriguing matchups that I'd like to talk about. There are two real rivalry games in the first round. You don't see that very often. But we've got Dexter-Burney. We kind of touched on that a little bit. Garrett, what do you see out of the Dexter-Burney matchup?
Yeah, like you said, two big-time rivals. Both teams are a little bit down to their standards of basketball. But, anytime Burney and Dexter get on the court together, it's going to be a ball game. So, two great coaches in Jason Long and Chad Allen. It's going to be a coaching chess match. And I expect a really good game there, the 5-12.
Yeah, 5-12, in college basketball, that's the most known upset is 5 versus 12 in a tournament bracket. But Burney's going to have the work cut out for him. I'm telling you, Ethan Zabellin has come in and he's played very strong for Dexter. Probably the guy who you start to look at on this team right around the rim, the way he's rebounded, the way he's scored. Now, Richland gave him a few problems until the second half, and Dexter started feeding the ball to him more. But he's a kid again. Last night he had a good game against Woodland. He's a kid right now getting it done for them. I'm not sure Bernie today has a guy who can handle him down low. Bernie's going to have to get hot from outside, and Dexter loves their zones. So that is an area I think Bernie has to take advantage of, is the zones and three-point shooting.
Bernie's really going to try to slow this game down. A lot of their games have been in the, high 20s, 30s. So, Dexter, typically Chad Allen coach team, wants to speed the game up. So we'll see how that turns out with, how that game goes.
And I think, Dexter may try to press them there, try to speed that game up. They can control tempo a little bit by doing that. But, you got to like a 5-seed Dexter, and some of the games they played, very good Woodland team last night that they come close to right there. It felt like they had the chances. You got to like the way Dexter looks there.
So another matchup on the opposite side, or the bottom part of the bracket, is Kennett versus Holcomb. That's a rivalry game. Those two teams, anytime that they play each other, it's there's always, even if they're not closely, not always competitive, the games are competitive. The one championship that Holcomb won was against a highly favored Kennett team. That Holcomb just came through and put it on that year in the championship. So let's talk a little bit about that Holcomb-Kennett matchup.
Yeah, the Holcomb-Kennett matchup, talking back to 2013, the Jamie Massey Holcomb team came in and just upset Kennett. That's a really good matchup on paper. Holcomb's a little bit down this year compared to the last few years in this tournament, but I expect Holcomb to come in with a John Hickson coach team and find a way to compete against Kennett.
Well, and it's an interesting deal for Kennett. They've got to play well in this game. And I think this is one, you kind of circle on that calendar and say, can Holcomb play well enough? Remember, they got a new kid coming back right here who can help that offense out.
True.
If they get hot shooting, look out Kennett, because Kennett hadn't always been the best defensive team in the past. Now, Fred Garman has got that team turned around defensively. Yep. Look, last year, if you was to ask me in that tournament, they didn't play very well defensively. They fouled every chance they got an opportunity. They was trying to slip them by the referees, I guess. They fouled so much. This year, not the case. Fred's got them playing a little bit different defense and more disciplined. Interesting matchup, but Holcomb's got to shoot it well, not turn the ball over.
Right. And that was a 3-14, but the one in the other part of that bracket that intrigues me as more than any, honestly, is this matchup between East Prairie and Doniphan. We see Doniphan as a 15 seed that, boy, I don't know if they play like a 15 seed. We've seen them this week, and they were up to the challenge a couple of times this week, and it'll be interesting. I think they can give East Prairie a matchup. What do you think, Bobby?
Well, I think it's a catch-22 for Doniphan. They want to play a slower-paced offense, but yet you've got to speed East Prairie up out of their offense and get them out of their half-court sets. It's hard to play both ways. You either play fast up and down, or you play slower. But getting East Prairie out of their good sets that they have offensively, when they set in and run their offense, remember, you got two really big guys down low. One of them is 6'7", Noah Johnson. And then you got a kid who is scoring at will. Connor Markham, Ty Watson can get it done. That's a hard team to contain right there. I don't like this matchup for Doniphan. And I think East Prairie, they can go man or zone. I think they'll quickly figure out if they have trouble in their man defense, I think they can go to zone against Doniphan and create a tough matchup there. Again, I don't like the matchup for Doniphan in this one.
For me, I'm the opposite. I like this matchup for the Doniphan Dons. A 4A school. They play some really tough opponents. I don't think no one in this tournament for East Prairie can stop Emmett Jones getting downhill. I think Doniphan will come in and compete, hard in the, early rounds of the tournament, and we'll see what happens.
Yep, absolutely.
And Emmett Jones is a kid who has experience playing in the big game, the championship last year.
That's right.
We talked about that, getting downhill. He gets inside the paint. I'm telling you, he's going to be at the rim in a hurry. He was a guy who's got to get the big man in trouble for East Prairie and foul trouble early in that. And if he can't do that, I think it's a tough night.
Well, I'm excited about all these first-round matchups. They're all going to be very interesting. Are there any that you look at that say, okay, if a couple of things happen moving forward, this could be a great matchup on the second or third night? Is there anyone that just jumps out at you guys looking at that bracket?
Well, for me, I'm going to go South Pem. They play Van Buren. I could see that as one South Pem could sneak up and beat a team right there. The Farmer kid can put a team on his back and carry him. I like even South Pem, maybe even moving on. If Kennett moves by Holcomb, South Pem and Kennett, can Kennett contain this kid? Yeah. Kennett doesn't have the size to contain a Robert Farmer necessarily inside because, even though he's a small guy, Kennett's not big.
Right.
I can see South Pem making a run all the way into the Final Four right here.
There you go. That's interesting.
And on my paper, I see the Puxico and Twin Rivers game being a big-time matchup. These teams have already met up once in the Bernie tournament, and Twin Rivers had a ball game going with Puxico for about 3 quarters and had it, close there in the 4th. I really like a Seth McBroom coach team in the Bloomfield Christmas tournament.
Yeah, and that Twin Rivers team, in the Bernie tournament, they ran several kids in. I think they go about probably 70 very confidently. So one kid gets in foul trouble, they can bring somebody else in. Again, I think the matchup down low, Hester will not have a problem matching up against Zimmerman. It's if he gets in foul trouble, where do they go there? That'll be a very interesting matchup, but can they keep up with the pressure all night that Puxico's going to bring? Because they're going to bring it full court all night.
Absolutely. So tell our folks who you're going to be looking at as your, maybe not a surprise, but a team that you think is going to really make some noise in this tournament. Garrett?
For my noise, a sleeper team is the Dexter Bearcats. The Bearcats are coming off a little bit of a rough CMO conference showing, but picked up a big win over Richland and took a really good Woodland team down to the wire last night. Like I mentioned earlier, Chad Allen coach team will always find a way to compete, even with the lower level guys, Dexter, don't count them out in this tournament.
Yeah, Allen knows how to win, and, he's got a chance to move through there. You see Bernie, if they can move along in that bracket, Malden, the next matchup, they've already beat Malden.
Right.
Dexter can make a deep run in this deal.
Absolutely. All right, who do you see, Bobby? Who's that team that maybe you were not talking about, but you think can make some noise?
Well, again, I'm going to stick. Let's look at this bracket down here. South Pim, they've got Kennett right out of the gate, I believe that is. No, they don't have Kennett. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They've got
Van Buren.
They've got Van Buren. If they can move from 11 seed past the 6 of Van Buren, again, Van Buren's something we don't know a whole lot about. Let's say they move along there. Well, let's say the seeds stick and they have to play Kennett.
Yep.
Kennett's a team, if that kid can move, now you can move them already into the top 4.
Yeah.
If there's a sleeper team for me, I think it's South Pim, just because of the way the bracket's set up for them. It's going to be a tough road, but that's a team they'll have to go through if the seeds hold, they'd have to go through a 6 and the 3. Tough matchup, but I can tell you this kid could put that team on their shoulders and carry them.
So if we'd sat here last year at this same time, and you and Jim did up at Bloomfield, but we've gotten a little more in depth into our conversation this year. If we sat here this time last year and we just said, who are the players to watch? You'd have said Cole Nichols, Tristan Johnson, those guys. We knew they were scorers. We knew they were great players. They're not here this year. Who are our players to watch in this year's tournament?
For me, my first player is Ashton Smooks from Kennett. A sophomore from Kennett, Fred Garman, really has him playing well, getting downhill. He plays inside out. He can shoot it. He can drive, off the bounce. Kennett's doing a really good job, a lot of dribble drive to put Smooks in a good place to score. I really like Ashton Smooks in this tournament.
Yeah, I think he's the second best number 6 man coming off the bench, because my number 1 guy to watch is Landon Bertrand from Puxico. I'm telling you, as a 6th man off the bench, I'm looking for him to make all-tournament team. He is that good of a player. He can come in. He lights it up. Huge energy, turnovers. He's the kind of kid you have to be prepared to guard when he comes to the game.
He had such a great tournament last year. I had it in my head that even as a freshman that he made the all-tournament team last year. It was in my head. I knew when I looked back at it that he didn't, but he had a great tournament last year even as a freshman. So, anything else that you guys want to add before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, I think I've got another player or two to watch in that tournament, if you do as well, Gary.
Yeah, my second player is Robert Farmer. Touching on him a little bit from South Pemiscot. Only a sophomore again. A lot of young talent in this tournament. It kind of shows how balanced it is. Robert Farmer is a really good guard. He can play inside out, get downhill. He's very crafty off the bounce. So once again, expect a Robert Farmer to have a good tournament for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, my second one's going to be Noah Johnson from East Prairie. We talked about him. He may not be your typical flashy basketball player inside, but he's long, he's tall, he rebounds well, and he runs the floor well. For big men who run the floor well like that, he's going to be a nightmare inside. Look, he's 6'7". I don't think anybody wants to take the ball inside on him. I think he's a kid to watch in this tournament. Also an all-tournament selection last year for him.
Right. Absolutely. All right.
My third pick is Camarius Farmer from Malden. He showed this week in Clarkton that he can, shoot the 3 and get Malden in a ball game. He had 20 against a really good Risco team, a really good defensively Risco team also. So Camarius Farmer, a 2-time tournament selection. Malden will need him to be big in this tournament.
Yeah, shoots it well from outside. A fantastic player for them. He can handle it as well. He can do a lot of things on the floor for him. I looked at my third one and I thought, I'm going to change my third one. I'm going to say role players on every team. And for Puxico, that's a Mason Parsley who comes in and plays great minutes for them. I think for Dexter, a Carter Stone who comes off the bench, and he understands his role on that team. Each team has them. When you come in, make sure you do a job and do it well. You're only going to be in there so many minutes. Give me everything you got for those few minutes, and when you come out, take your break then. Role players for teams will be key in this tournament. I think teams like Puxico, that's what makes the difference. Dexter moving on as they get deeper into this tournament, I think that makes the difference for them. Kids like that, Tucker Temples, he starts. He's a smart shooter for Dexter. I think he knows when he needs to take his shots, when he doesn't. Those things will play key in this tournament for every team.
We tend to focus on the scorers, and a lot of times when we look at these tournament and all tournament selections. I remember a few years ago, Kennett had a young man named Adam Grantham. He's a great baseball player, but he played kind of just a journeyman's game in basketball. He was a rebounder. I think he averaged maybe 6.5 points a game in that tournament, but he made the all-tournament team because people recognized the contribution that he made. So what you're talking about, Bobby, right there are players that make those contributions, may not get all the flash, may not get all the publicity, may not score all the points, but they're a huge part of these teams' wins.
And we talk about that. If you want to see a good recipe to teams who win, don't look at the score column. Go look at the assist.
Mm-hmm.
When teams share the basketball, hey, people score. Teams who have high assisting games, that's the teams I'm worried about in tournaments because, hey, the ball movement's going to get foul trouble happening, scoring quick in bunches. Those are the things you look for in championship teams.
Well, that's going to wrap us up here at the Aycorp Media Studios here in Malden, Missouri. We hope you found our time together enjoyable and informative. For Bobby Alford, Garrett Hicks, all the folks behind the scenes here at Aycorp Sports, we thank you for joining us. And we'll see you in just over 237 hours from now, 10 a.m. on the 27th day of December, or 26th day of December. Between now and then, have a Merry Christmas.